And when they saw that they didn't want to turn the economy back on worldwide, and we saw France and we saw places like Spain and Germany and Australia, and we saw regulators in the UK try to keep the lockdowns going and say, oh, now you need to take a third, fourth. They're now promoting a fifth shot in Israel. They're now promoting a fourth shot in Australia and here in the US. And then when they said, we're coming after under 16s, we're coming after 5 and up, people said this is too far, and it really has triggered a massive uptick in resistance, which is good.
How do you see it ending? I mean, you're an optimistic guy. I think you're like me in the sense of like, we're going to win this, people can win this. But how do you see it being, this winter, which a lot of people are thinking is going to be a pretty dark period for everyone?
Well, yes, it's always darkest before the dawn. And when you give in to bullying, it only gets worse. When you fight back, it's the only time it ends. And so everybody looks at this psychotic evil. They look at the sociopathic, behavior of big pharma and the media and Hollywood all ganged up on the free humans of Earth. And we say they must win because they're doing it, that they must be the authority. They must have the moral high ground because, at a subconscious level, because they're executing something so insane. But this is a weakness of the New World Order, weakness of globalists, weakness of their plans all over the world, with their programs being in so much trouble the last decade. As your father, predicted 20 years ago on my show, he said by 2016, he thought that there would be a global chain reaction awakening. The battle would become incredibly intense around 2020, 2021. Then we'll probably win if we're going to win. That's up to us around 2026, 2027. I mean, there'll still be some big fights after that. But everything we see happening now is an attempt to stop the global awakening.
I'm joined by Kieran Morrissey. Kieran has worked at a hospital for 22 years. He wrote an article in LouRockwell.com about the Marburg virus. Hi, Kieran. Thanks for talking to us. Could you talk us through the Marburg virus and what this is all about?
Okay. I've been following this virus since March 2020. I had a sore throat, which was blamed on COVID. And I was off sick for quite a while until I discovered that my illness wasn't actually COVID at all. But it bought me some time to look into it while it was developing. And I was talking to people like Dr. Dolores Cahill and others about what was going on. And I became very suspicious that the symptoms that I was hearing about sounded more like an autoimmune disease, which I was very familiar with. But alongside that, I've been doing a lot of research and studying into immunology and virology, trying to understand the whole background into how this virus developed and the vaccines and whatnot. And I had heard a couple of rumors from Australia about a new version of the flu, and I was very suspicious. And my antenna were up, and I was trying to get ahead of things. And in my research, I noticed articles by Gavi, which is Bill Gates' organization. Also, Tedros of WHO went online and started scaremongering about this Marburg virus, which is a hemorrhagic fever similar to Ebola.
It's been coming for years, in all fairness. As long as I've been in the industry, which is the best part of 30 years, drivers have been leaving, fresh blood hasn't been coming in and replacing it. And so the gap between those leaving and those coming has gradually got bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the last 12 months, because there hasn't been any HGV tests, what's happened is we've had no fresh blood coming in, and as all the old ones leave as well at the same time, it's just created a perfect storm.
So because of the pandemic, people haven't been getting licenses for the last year. I'm not hearing that advertised.
But you won't do, because it doesn't suit the government's narrative, because if they do anything wrong, the first thing they do is just try blaming somebody else. That's what the government does. The other thing as well is at the minute the DVLA have got about 54,000 driving licenses, or 54,000 HGV driving licenses, and they're holding everyone to hostage because they're not processing the licenses.
Another example is when people tell me that they're going to go to schools to canvass, to inform parents and children and staff about what's really going on behind the scenes. What I say to them is, don't push it. Stand outside the school, set up a stall, have tea, coffee, biscuits, and sweets, and attract. Be a bit more gentle and subtle. Be harmless. Don't trespass on the school, and let them come to you. When they come to you, You're no longer in trespass. You're no longer breaching the Public Order Act. You know, you're no longer offending anyone. You're no longer likely to using words or behavior likely to cause offense, harassment, distress. And so you're staying within their version of the rules. I call them rules because I don't like to use the word law. It's not law, it's the rules. So what else can we do? We can join networks. We can go to talks for, listen to people like me who are giving people more reliable information than they will ever get on the BBC, for example, waking people up to who they really are. So individually, I'd say, wake up to who you really are, and collectively, I would say, join forces, join hands with people who think like you, so that you building confidence. You no longer think that you're bonkers, because everyone's saying you're bonkers. But this last year and a half has been the finest 18 months of my life, because I no longer feel lonely.
Yeah, it's compliance, isn't it? It's compliance with an agenda that doesn't give you information, that doesn't give you freedom of choice, that expects you to accept a narrative from corporate billionaire and trillionaires without questioning it. You know, a narrative that I mean, what happened to vegetables? What happened to eating vegetables? What happened to moderate exercise? What happened to your mindfulness or your meditation? What religious people would call prayer? What is it? All that stuff that we were taught growing up. You know, drop someone on the ground, 3-second rule.
Yeah, my 30-second rule when I was a kid.
You know, this kid's ill. Let's all go around his house, so we'll develop this natural immunity. You know, that's all just been wiped off the table without any question whatsoever. It doesn't border on insanity. It is utter insanity. And for those of us that lost colleagues fighting for this freedom, people like myself, I mean, I was 19 years old when I was on active service, putting my life on the line for what I at least believed was freedom. Do you think these corporate trillionaires care anything about that? Do you think they lose sweat over all these coffins coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq and such places? It's you know, they don't, do they? But I do, and my fellow veterans do.
This was not a simple vote whether to, you know, put a new set of plants in the local park. This is a serious decision that creates long-term ramifications for people's liberties in Wales and other parts of the United Kingdom as we see these votes progress across other parts of the UK. The fact that an MP was unable to access the Zoom is quite ludicrous, and the fact that has then had an influence on the vote, and there doesn't seem to be a chance of a revote. But I do understand that there is talk of a legal challenge, because the lasting ramifications of this are really, really significant, as I'm sure you're quite aware.
Oh, absolutely, it's huge, and you know, we've kind of spoke to people before with the sense that once you can mandate it for someone to take a medical procedure, that there's nothing that doesn't set a precedent for going forward. Do you think it's just a matter of time before we'll have them in England as well?
Unfortunately, I do think that's the case. I mean, Scotland has already set precedent. Wales has now followed step, and you know, we've got this consultation that's taking part in the UK, in England at the moment, which closes in 5 days' time. So, encourage your viewers to make sure they have their voices heard within these things. But this is the third consultation we've seen on this subject. It's a matter of course. So it does come down to the public, the businesses, the trade associations to really make their voices heard that this is not acceptable in British culture. We don't want to create a situation where people are locked out of society based upon their medical decision. We don't want to be a paper society when you go to the pub or the restaurant with your friends that you have to identify your medical status. And you're absolutely right. This is a gateway to a longer term change with digital IDs, and today it's a COVID vaccine. What is it going to be tomorrow? And I think people really need to understand the long-term ramifications of this.
Right, so what can we do? Well, we can all stand up and be counted. We can either avoid and fight or do both, and I advocate both. Because once you avoid, you're empowered, you know that you're safe, but you still don't want to let the government get away with this sort of action. So, as I say, the petition that can be signed, and it's there for all to see. I've got the link here. Petition number.
Okay, yeah, 597714. Correct.
It's easy to find. And it's there for another 5 months. That's the first thing to do. I know that you're sort of not happy about MPs and how they're there to help us. Well, they should be helping us. I suspect some of them do not know about fluoride, especially the brand new ones who haven't been there for more than 2 years. There are people in the House of Commons and in the House of Lords who were against fluoridation back in 2003. We've contacted them and hope that they will be able to, shall we say, educate their colleagues. What else can we do? We can keep writing ad nauseum to Sajid Javid, but he probably won't reply, or we'll just get a template letter back, which will just say the same thing all the time. But at least they will know that there is a groundswell opinion against this action.
What actually really tipped the scales for me was the practice I was working in was going to start giving the COVID vax to 12 to 15-year-olds. And that was a line in the sand for me. So I resigned. And then, that's basically what led to this. And then within a few days of putting my resignation, I got an invitation from our medical board to please explain. And I was on a charge of providing COVID misinformation and undermining the national vaccination strategy. Hence, I needed to write a letter to defend my position.
Do your fellow members of the judiciary, do they agree with your opinions at all, or are they kind of on the side of the state?
Yeah, some of them, I think they agree. I have some. I received some message here and there from colleagues, and some of them, yes, they agree. Others are still completely numb by the TV. You have to see that the judges are not superior entities that have better capacities, better skills. No, they are coming from the same society that is captured by the fear that was provoked, that was triggered by the propaganda system and by the corrupt government. So some of them, yes, some of them, one or two also made public their opinions about the so-called pandemic, but most of them either are afraid, either are captured by the fear as most of the population.